when it works.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, welcome to Project Metal Music's YouTube channel with your host Elion, and we are here with Jason and Mark from the brilliant band Divine Martyr. So welcome guys.
Greetings. Thanks for having
Greetings.
us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. Yeah, so guys, could you introduce yourselves and what you do within the band?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. I'm Jason. I play guitar and I do the occasional backing vocals. Kind of depends on the song, depends on the set, but mainly guitar is my function in the band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm Mark. I'm the guy behind the kit. I play drums, but I do a lot of principal orchestration, and I will play keyboard parts, studio keyboard parts, and program the backing tracks and so forth, and set up our live show. And on rare occurrence, we'll do live vocals or studio vocals, I'll say as well, more as texturing in the background as part of more of an effect. So that's what we do in the band. And I'll wait for L's next cue, but it's yeah. So we could walk through some of the process on how we usually will set up a part. We'll start writing some of the ideas, be it an orchestral idea. I'll toss it back to Jason. Jason we'll kind of cross tie between the part writing process. Jason will come up with a great part, and we'll go back and forth on the final writing, and then tie it in. We'll have our vocalist look at it as well, and she'll come up with some great leads on the vocal lines and on the writing process, and we all go around the circle until we have a finished product.
Yep.
So,
That's pretty well sums it up. Yeah, Mark's kind of the main idea writer behind everything. Like you said, he'll build the kind of the orchestration and the main structure of the song, and then we'll all kind of chime in on arrangements and different parts like that, and add the guitar, the bass, the vocals, whatever's needed at that point. But yeah, he's kind of the mastermind behind most of what we do. So yeah, he's a big part of the band for sure.
mhm.
Yeah, sorry about that,
Yeah,
guys. My technology decided to have a massive dump on me
it's a
for
challenge,
some
isn't it?
reason.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I
so
feel you.
yeah, 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 yeah. So as kids, what were you listening to?
Okay.
Uh,
What?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
man.
go ahead. I was gonna say, go ahead. What do we listen to? My list changes probably yearly, and that's by design. I don't
Mhm.
want to say I perpetually look for new artists, but I love hearing the new ideas that are coming out. But you've got the top five I can rattle off pretty quickly. So Nightwish, I think that's pretty obvious.
Mhm.
Camelot, Xandria, Symphony X, Dream Theater. You can add to that anything from about everything. So I'll have moments where I'll go back and listen to old Rush. I'll go and listen to Iron Maiden. I'll go and listen to. Let me throw something off because I'll listen to everything and get ideas. I'll listen to a Santana album. I'll go and listen to Dennis Chambers. Really groove centric, great playing, and then anything in between. I just keep listening to different artists. So
Yeah. I
I'll
mean,
handle
you never know where inspiration is going to come from. So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
always keep an open mind is what I say for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah, for me, gosh, where did my musical journey started? Mid 80s. I had an older brother that was big into, the 80s hair metal. So there was a lot of Rat, there was a lot of Motley Crue, there's a lot of Van Halen, AC/DC. That's kind of the first, I'll say, heavy music that I was exposed to. And then Guns N' Roses hit kind of in that late 80s, and that was very popular. So I kind of jumped on that. Um, for true, what I'd call true metal, I really got into Metallica and Anthrax. That was kind of my entry into, the whole kind of thrash metal, speed metal, whatever you want to call that. And so that kind of elevated from Metallica to Slayer. From Slayer, it was, death metal. So I got into Carcass. I got into Suffocation. I got into, the really heavy death metal, grindcore, that kind of stuff. Was a big part of the middle, early to mid 90s. It was kind of all death metal. I think Pantera hit about that time too. So I was a big Pantera fan. Followed them for quite a number of years. From that, I kind of changed gears a little bit and went more, it's kind of when I discovered Dream Theater and, Fate's Warning, some of that kind of stuff. Went more in a kind of progressive rock, progressive metal direction. Discovered a few bands around that time. There's a band that's relatively unknown, I will say, or still very underground, called Cynic. They kind of started out in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of got, they were sort of part of that whole early death metal movement, but to me, they were always different and unique because they had, the metal influence, but also more of kind of the jazz infusion kind of influences that made their way into their music. So they were always very unique and really are to this day. So that kind of helped pull me more in that prog direction, because they had that sort of prog sensibility too. And then from there, it went from, sort of thrash death metal, then it was prog, and then that's kind of when I discovered symphonic metal in the early 2000s. So, like Mark said, Nightwish, Camelot, those were two of the early ones. Within Temptation was another one that kind of jumped out at me early on. And then from there, it was just, the gloves were off, so to speak. I mean, symphonic metal was kind of what I had always searched for. I'd always loved metal. I'd always loved kind of the classical orchestrated type of music too. And that was like the perfect marriage of those two worlds, I guess, musically. And I think still to this day, symphonic metal captures that sort of energy better than anything out there. That's kind of where my brain lives now. So yeah, that brings us up to date, I guess. That's very much what I listen to today, is just a lot of the symphonic. I still go back and listen to the old records, the old Metallica stuff, Anthrax. That's kind of that's what inspired me to start playing, so I still have a lot of appreciation for that. But my tastes have kind of evolved into, something just much more grand, I guess. It's kind of where we are now. So that's sort of the evolution of my music in a couple of minutes there. But
Cool. So who actually got you into music? Was it a family member, a friend, or was it a natural progression?
All the above. I'll start on this one and then I'll let Jason jump in. But my family was I came from a family of musicians and a big circle of musicians that were orchestral musicians. Or actually, my mom, my late mother, she has passed away. She was an organist and a very gifted soprano back in the years. I think I don't know I think she just sang cantata the whole time. I think she stayed in the church and stayed and sang that style on that side of the aisle. And so very gifted organist, very very good vocalist. And my father also had some training in music, though he just is more of a music appreciation. But he could give him a piece of music, he still played on the piano.
Nice.
So what started naturally, we all were doing the kids music programs, and then I started in the school programs in the wind and concert bands and youth orchestras in percussion, and then worked my way. I found out I did have a love for music. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do a performance side. So what I actually ended up doing is I went all the way through uni with a music program, more on the music technology and the composition side. But then also, started also performing. Like it's a second nature you're a writer, and then all of a sudden, oh, you're a performer now. So it came like that. So I'll
it's
hand it
kind
over
of hard
to
to
Jason.
separate those two, really, right? I mean, if you're
It is, yeah.
so much involved in the production side and the composition side, it's almost hard not to become a performer, really. It would be tough. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny for me. I didn't really come from a musical family so much. I mean, like Mark said, a lot of my family members are music, more music appreciation and listeners, but not so much players or performers. So for me, again, it was just kind of being exposed to that stuff at an early age, and then as I got older, my friends, of course, were all metalheads, so I kind of got exposed to a lot of different bands and different types of music that way. And then, as I got into, was around 15, 16 when I started playing guitar. And that's really when I kind of got inspired to not just be a listener or observer, but to actually get into creating and writing music. And then kind of got into my first band around 18. So yeah, for me, it was just kind of the exposure to music, the appreciation for it developed first. And then later it's like, okay, I want to actually create and perform this. And so that was a
Yep.
natural kind of transition for me. So,
And that's actually, yeah, that's to tie into what Jason was saying. That's actually one thing. I know some like the people in the circles I played in, they are incredible musicians, and I've seen them play some of the most rigorous, just technically rigorous parts. We got a friend of ours who's a very gifted violist, and just perfect tone. You can hear the training in his ear. You can hear the training in his fingers. And then his wife is a very proficient pianist, and she can sight read almost anything incredibly. And
man,
it turned into, it's like, I actually asked him, I said, do you have anything that you've ever written? I asked them that, and it turned into, they actually did, but it's always dwarfed. You have to play, I hate to say it, be A-list cover musician, because you're in a symphony orchestra. So you're playing a lot of, I hate using the term symphony orchestra and cover musicians, but that's what they played. And it's like, well, where's your voice? What do you want to say with music? And they actually have some incredibly good music as well. So that's why it's like, rather than being more of a performer, I would rather be a writer, a little more on the writing side, see if I can say something that can reach somebody's ears and heart. So.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, who actually inspired you to say, you know what, I wanted to pick up the guitar, I want to become a drummer? So, who actually inspired you to become a musician?
Hey, you want to go ahead, Jason, or I can?
Yeah, for sure. That's easy for me. James Hetfield. I mean, he's like the godfather of rhythm guitar, So I mean, there were some other bands around that time. Like I said, Anthrax was a band that I really got into early on, and I still love their stuff. But Hetfield was really the guy where it was like, okay, I want to do what he was doing. You know what I mean? Because he's still a monster today. I mean, you say what you want about Metallica. I mean, you can't argue with that kind of longevity. I mean, how many bands are playing that type of aggressive music for 40 plus years? I mean, it's just absolutely impressive. And he's every bit the monster player today that he was, back in the 80s. So yeah, he was really my number one inspiration for, hey, I want to really pick up a guitar and get serious about it. So he's the guy. And there've been a lot of players along the way that have, kind of influenced or inspired me in different ways, but he's the guy that I always come back to for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's one thing that's like no one ever talked about. They're starting to now, maybe as they're getting a little more on the aged side. You said 40 years. He still can sing. He still can project that voice. He hasn't fried his vocal cords through nodules. He's trained properly. So he's done a great job.
Right.
It's one of those that's like, hey, if he tunes in, great job, James. At 40 years, I that's impressive. Very impressive. So
I mean, I hope I'm still playing in my 60s.
Yeah. It's one thing I try to say with my students. I said, I'm glad you can play fast. Can you do it when you're 80 years old? And they look at me cross-eyed, and I'm like, you can do it. Just work on it. And it's one of those sustainability.
You got to condition yourself for that. It does just happen.
So,
yep.
But yeah, for me on drums, it's pretty. Anybody who's a drummer, the late great Neil Peart of Rush, he's the one that really inspired me, and especially in prog drumming, the introduction to prog. Because prior to that, the drummers I listened to growing up, my parents were fans of Billy Joel, so that's Liberty DeVito back in the day. Super great pocket drummer from New York, and it's just straight rock, and you're like, you're like, it's the devil's in the details, if you will. He's very, very good at groove playing. He's a very good groove player. But then after that, it was like, I want a little more speed, a little more like chops. So I was introduced to two 90s bands. One was Green Day. They're still around, obviously, with Trey, and Trey's an amazing drummer. And the other one was, at the time, the late, I think it's Phil. I don't remember the original. I think it was the original drummer for Gin Blossoms. So alt rock band out of Tempe, and just good songwriting. And but that was like my progression from Billy Joel, which is like the piano style of pop rock, to all of a sudden I started hearing about this band called Rush. Be like, well, if you want to really be inspired, check this guy named Neil out from the band Rush. Okay, I'll check him out. And that quickly turned into listening to Rush. And then at the time, the only thing I could get my hands on similarly was Van Halen, where I came from. We were in this data black hole, I'm going to say. I didn't know of any other bands that were remotely this heavy until Metallica came out as well, And I think I occasionally heard Yes. So the band Yes, just monstrous players. And I was like, well, these bands are great. Where do I hear more of this? And it wasn't until I got to uni and I started hearing of a band called Dream Theater. So we got to finally started to hear about this guy named Mike Portnoy at the time. And I was like, well, this is great. This is like the next progression step. And I appreciated it like for about 3 or 4 years. And then I actually heard from a lesser well-known drummer, Jason Rulo of Symphony X. I was really blown away actually by how tight for that genre he played and musically he played. But then that opened the door to Camelot. That opened the door to Nightwish. That opened the door to Xandria, and I got into the symphonic realm. So, and that's really where I've kind of stayed. So it's like I've had this, like to Jason's point, just this natural progression where you started finding more and more drummers as you learned about new drummers. You found a new favorite drummer, and it's like it almost turned into, oh, what week is this? Oh, we're in November, or we're in the month of November. Okay, well, I found 5 new drummers that I never heard of before, and I'm absolutely blown away by them, and they have great ideas. How come I haven't heard of these guys before? And that's what it was. And then it quickly got to the point where I've heard of a few thousand drummers, and then I'm like, well, which one is my favorite? Because they're all doing great things. So I kind of have settled into, I'm going to say, power prog symphonic in that realm. But there's something to also be said from a drummer who can just groove really well in the pocket and play musically. So,
absolutely, yeah,
cool. So before starting Divine Martyr, were you in any other bands prior to starting the band?
Yeah. I'll jump on this one. Yeah, I started in a jazz combo group through the high school. We didn't really have a name. I started with a high school alt metal band that I played with when I graduated from high school, and then we played a little bit, wrote our own material. Didn't really have anything on the radio or have anything out there, even on the internet to this day. While I was in that band, I joined a college rock band, so psychedelic college rock band named Lady Moon out of Indianapolis, and we toured regionally. So mostly, if there was a festival with, like, let's say we were playing with a band that was playing a lot like Grateful Dead style, or was playing on the other side more. Yeah, we also got into some of the. We would play with bands like I think headliners would be like Humphreys or something like that from Indiana. We'd be like probably at the very opening of the festival, and it'd be psychedelic jam rock. And then from there, I played. I moved after uni. I signed up with Austin Bridges, which is a straight up college rock band with really good groove. And it's kind of like mixed alternative rock with some of the Dave Matthews style of feels. So groove centric rock, but we never really got that heavy. So then it was a progression from there, as well as a bunch of studio stuff I had worked on before we started Divine Martyr, and that was really kind of the direction I hadn't been in a long time, if ever. I haven't gone to at least this bombastic of playing in a while. So yeah, that was the direction I definitely was like, okay, it's time to get really heavy. So that's funny. I kind of come from the other side of the spectrum.
So, you know, I'm dating myself a little bit. So back to 1995, I think was my first band. Um, Pretty much right out of high school. It was a death metal band, and they were called Dystopia. So I did that for a few years, and then I'd say I probably took a few years off because I got married, started a family about that time. So I kind of stepped away from music for a little while. But early 2000s, I got in with a band called Torn Veil, based out of Indianapolis. And we kind of did some regional shows and such. We didn't go out too far, but did that for about 4 or 5 years. And that kind of fizzled out after a while. So and that was more of a, I always referred to that band as kind of a really heavy Creed, because that's kind of, I was really into Creed at that point in time, and I think it had a similar feel to that, but heavier, just because of kind of the background that I came from. It was much more guitar heavy, but really just kind of melodic, heavy rock, I guess you could call it. Light metal. I don't know. It's kind of that, like, towed the line between rock and metal. Yeah, I'm not really sure where to land that band. But that was a really cool project. And then from there, I kind of went back to my more extreme metal roots. I was in a band called Program the Masses with an old drummer buddy of mine, and he was, you know, he came from that school where he was like equal parts Rush and equal parts Morbid Angel. You know, the guy could play anything from jazz fusion to the most extreme metal double bass stuff that you could ever imagine. I mean, the guy was just all over the place. So we did that for about 2 years. That was mainly more of a studio project, though. We only played a handful of shows. And let's see, that took me up to about 2008. And I really didn't do a whole lot musically until I met, you know, Mark and Woody and the guys in DM, which would have been more like 2016. I think it was late 2016 that I met you guys.
That was the
So,
building.
you know, I had a bit of a lull musically from, you know, like I said, 2008 until 16. And again, I had younger, you know, like preteen, teenage kids, you know, so I kind of concentrated more on the family for that spell of time. But then, you know, 2015 came around, and I had kind of gotten the itch to get back into music. And, you know, I saw Mark's ad, I think just at the right time. I think it was just kind of meant to be. You know, you all come together, and you're all kind of on the same page musically. You're looking for the same thing. You got the same values, the same musical interests, and we all just sort of fell together right at the right time, I think. And you know, the band was able to move forward from that point. And, you know, here we are, what, 7, 8 years later.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, part of that was also COVID. You had the COVID roadblock. So
exactly.
What do you do when you're shut down, you know?
Exactly. So, yeah, we just kind of focused on writing and kind of, you know, honing our craft during that time, but obviously weren't able to get out and do too much in the public. So definitely glad to be back to semi-normal, playing shows, that sort of thing again.
Mm-hmm.
That was a rough time to be a musician.
It was.
Certain. And I know a lot of bands are still kind of pulling out of that. So it's tough. Yeah.
So what has the band been up to, especially in the last couple of years after COVID?
Well, the biggest thing we've been doing is, since we mentioned COVID and a lot of writing, we have we'll say a very lengthy, extremely lengthy backlog of songs that we haven't recorded yet.
I'll be in a minute.
Okay.
Stand by.
No.
But yeah, I can just keep it going from here. It's
go for it.
Yeah, we have a lengthy backlog of material. It's in some flesh of idea, or some fleshed out ideas, just rough drafts, all the way up to basically hit the record button and let's go. We probably, I'm almost taking the Tom Petty approach, where I think Tom wrote, before he released an album, I want to say he wrote something like just random trivia. I was told anecdotally, somebody could fact check this and immediately say, no, it's completely wrong, and I'd be fine with it. But I think Tom had written something like 900 to 1,000 songs and only like 30 of those made it onto 3 albums. Like 30, like song ideas, and he had to pair through all those songs. And it's one of those. If I have an idea, whether it's great or terrible, we have it down as, you know, Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Jason 1, Jason 2, Jason 3, you know, Woody 1, Woody 2, Woody 3, and so forth. Or we just come up with a completely random title. Either way, you know.
Yeah.
Or a descriptive, we got the latest one, Mark Power Ballad 1, or something like that, where it's like, you know.
Everything's a working title, really, until it's not. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, Mark, easily we have, gosh, what, 3-4 albums worth of music. I mean, honestly, if we sit and like kind of diced all of it up, I mean,
yeah,
easily enough for 4 records, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, the hard part at that point is just, you know, what do we focus on? What do we move forward with? And that's kind of been our biggest challenge the last couple of years, is just, okay, we have all these ideas now. Which ones do we, like you said, which ones do we flesh out? Which ones do we focus on and try to develop and say, okay, here's the 10 or 12 that we really like for the record.
Yep.
And just start kind of moving
Sorry
forward with
about that, guys.
So,
that was my mother on the phone.
Oh,
no worries. Hope all is well, man.
that's fine. While you're gone, we just gave the rundown of the writing process and so forth of what we're working on. So,
Yep.
So yeah, we've got about, quick recap, we've got probably 2 to 3 albums worth of material. We just need to select the ones we want to move forward with.
Yep.
And so we've done that for this album. So
yeah, so we got what, 12 songs, I think we're focusing on, 10 to 12. And
yep,
you know, a couple of those are recorded. Some of them are in the sort of like tracking stage where we have drums and guitars, we need bass, you know, just various stages of completion at this point. Yeah, we were hoping for this year, but we ran into some complications, we'll say, with the whole recording, tracking, mixing process. So we're sort of stepping back and kind of retooling, and you know, we'll keep pushing forward. It's about all we can do right now. So
exactly. Yep. So yeah, let me see, until L gets back on completely. It's like, so I can go to a little more details on that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He's up. Perfect.
There.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
You can't see him, but he's there.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, I mean, a play-by-play more detail is I just wrapped up 5 songs on the drum tracks. I actually tracked with a former student of mine.
Guys, again.
Go for it, man.
So, and I'll keep telling the story. So yeah, tracked with a former student of mine who is now a very good recording engineer, who is now moving to Las Vegas. So I caught him before he went to Las Vegas, and I got our drum tracks knocked out for the majority of the songs, just locally. Anything from power ballads to bombastic prog metal. We've got a opera rock. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good cross section of music, and you know, we're excited to get some new music out there. You know, I know it's, like I said, it's been kind of a bumpy process the last, we'll say, year or so. But again, we're kind of, you know, we're just persevering. We're moving forward. We're looking to retool and maybe kind of build up our personal studios to the point where we can do some of our own tracking. And kind of get that to a point where we can just farm it out and have somebody mix and master for us. So, you know, like I said, we're changing gears a little bit, kind of, you know, they say necessity is the mother of invention, and that's kind of where we are right now. We've been hit with some obstacles. We've had a few wrenches, you know, thrown in our process. And so we're just kind of had to step back and sort of reevaluate. But I think we've got a general game plan moving forward, you know, God willing.
Exactly.
Yeah, the next 6 months go, but I think that's the plan. Like I said, is to kind of tool up on some of our personal studios and be able to handle some of this on our own and not be as reliant on another engineer, another studio to kind of do some of those processes for us. So we'll see. Hopefully, you know, fingers crossed, it'll come together. Then as far as
so are you I don't know if you mentioned, because I was out on the phone with my mother. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, as far as gigs and tours, we've submitted to a number of festivals
Mhm.
for next year. Probably, I think in the neighborhood of 30 festivals. We've got a couple of hits so far, but we're still waiting to kind of hear back on some of those, and hopefully those will open up. And that's
Yep.
more, I'd call it regional stuff, you know. So Midwestern United States, a lot of those, maybe a couple spots out on the East Coast, Pennsylvania, that sort of thing. You know, but we're kind of just definitely looking to branch out a little bit. This year was pretty quiet on live shows. I think we did what, 3 or 4, which
Yeah.
is
Very
definitely a
well.
drop from last year where we did probably a dozen or so. So we were pretty light on the gigs this year, but we're definitely hoping to ramp up next year and
Yep.
and you know, be a little bit busier on the live front, definitely.
Well, another thing we're also trying to do is expand also outside of the U.S. We have people emailing us like we didn't know we had people listening to us across the pond, and we'll get an email from Sydney, Australia. We just got one, I think, from was it Germany or and then one from the UK
Yeah.
just in the last week. Of hey, when are you playing in these areas? And I'm like, let's see how feasible it is to get over there. I want to. It's like I want to go back to Britain. I've got some friends there, if nothing else, and it's like I'd love to play back across the pond. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And Mark's really good about tracking all of our metrics, you know, as far as like social media reaches and,
Mhm.
you know, where the music's being played and streamed and, you know, where a lot of our listeners are based. He's really good about tracking that stuff on kind of a, well, ongoing basis, really. But he gives a report to the band every month and says, you know, here's the cities where we're really hitting right now and kind of tracking the listeners and the followers. And, you know, and obviously that's what it takes. You don't want to go to a city where you have 2 listeners and nobody shows up, right? So you kind of
Yep.
have to be smart and kind of do the homework up front and know, you know, what sort of listenership you're walking into on a given city or a given venue. So
Exactly.
we're trying to be very strategic about when and where we play. I mean, obviously it's not entirely up to us, but as far as things that we try to pursue in cities that we look to play in, we try to be very strategic about that. So, yeah, like I said, we'll see how next year goes, but we're hoping things open up a little bit for us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about if everything sort of like lines up and all the stars align. Would you ever like obviously you would, but if everything lines up and you've got like a full on tour, would you do like a tour of the UK and Europe, or go down to South Africa, or even over to Australia and New Zealand? Those types of
Yeah.
areas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if everything lines up correctly, that's exactly what we would do. Is I would take a I would we all work full time in our day job, and we have great careers, but that's what we save PTO for. You know, we in the U.S. it's called PTO. I don't know what it's called over there, but time off. We would just take vacation and be like, great, let's tour through the entire UK. Let's tour. You know, in 2 or 3 weeks we can tour the UK and then Germany, where we've got some following, and then go into Scandinavian
Mhm.
countries and so forth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, we would be completely happy with that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
100%. Yeah, I mean, our biggest challenge right now is primarily financial. You know, just
yep,
because we're not working with a label, everything's kind of DIY. So you know, obviously, if like you said, if the stars align, if those doors open up and say here's 10 or 15 or 20 dates that you could do in Europe or wherever, South America, Australia, whatever that would look like. I mean, certainly if those
yep,
doors open, we're going to pay attention to that.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, I have to be the guy who's on here and do the budget and says as long as we don't end up with like a massive hole, you know, or whatever, and we can get over and get our expenses paid to get over there and so forth. Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like any business venture. I mean,
yeah,
it's got to be, obviously we want to get out and play, but at some point it has to be profitable, or it just doesn't
yeah,
make sense fiscally to take that kind of a risk, right? So we have to kind of weigh all the options and all the pros and cons, and definitely feel peace about taking the plunge on something like that, right? Or
yep,
like I said, God willing, we have $1 million drop in our account, out of nowhere, right? And it just is, divinely meant to be. But we'll see. I mean, crazier things have happened. So again, if those doors open, we pay attention to that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if you, like I said, I was talking to my mother. Are you writing any new material
Yep.
as is?
Oh, yeah. Always.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
we ever stop writing. It's just
Yeah.
it's sort of it's a perpetual thing that we do. I mean, even when we're not recording it at that moment, right? We're always writing and creating for sure.
Oh, yeah, I've got one where it's like, well, that idea didn't work, and it's almost like what Neil said on an early interview with Rush. It says, "What do you say?" He paraphrased somebody's quote as well, and I forgot who originally said the quote, but I'll say it's art is not. It's like art is not really finished; it's always abandoned. You just get to a point where you hit copyright and you just start abandoning. You abandon the artwork because you're like, you know what, that's as good as it's going to get for right now. Otherwise, on an album we turned into Brian Wilson, with Smile. It took 30 years to get Smile out, and that man's a genius, hands down a genius. And it's like, but 30 years for an album is like, we don't quite want to wait 30 years to get an album out,
Yeah.
even
I mean,
though that
that's
was a masterpiece. So
Oh, for sure, yeah. But it's like you said. I mean, you with any type of art, whether it's music, whether it's painting, it's whatever. I mean, you do run the risk of overworking it at a certain point. So yeah, I think you kind of have to, as an artist, you have to get to a place where it's like, okay, this, I see all the flaws and I see all the things that are wrong with this, but I mean, at some point, you just have to say, okay, this is good enough, right? Which, I mean, as an artist can be tough to do, right? Because you're always going to be your own worst critic, right? So you're gonna see all the holes in everything. But but yeah, if you never get to the point where you can share that art with the world, then it's like, you ask yourself at a certain point, why am I even doing this if I can't get it out there? So yeah, it's a tough thing, man. But yeah, it's part of the process.
Yeah, we're always writing ideas, and it's something for the future, or something for very advanced in the future, or maybe something even we just say, hey, here's the progression, and sell it to an artist who really wants to do it, or something. There's always that aspect too. So it's like, but
Absolutely.
if you have an
Yeah,
idea, it's like we write it. So yeah, or if I have an
exactly.
idea, I write it. So
Yeah, you capture it, and then you figure out later what you're going to do with it. You keep it,
yep,
you sell it, whatever, right? But if you get an idea, you don't ignore that. Always capture it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, where can people find you on social media?
okay. I'll jump in on this. So
Yeah.
come visit us on Facebook. I actually try to, and I'm trying to get faster with my responses, and say hi, please, even if it's just like, hey, what's up? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
well, we love that. So Facebook.com/Divine Martyr. So just the name, Divine Martyr. And then we've got our Instagram. I'll let Jason's handling a lot of the Instagram activity. So go ahead.
Yeah, that's like, that one's Divine Martyr Official with a period in between each word. So yeah, like Mark said, he's more of the Facebook guy and kind of tracking those metrics. I do more of the Instagram stuff. Those are the two big ones for us at the moment. We haven't really done TikTok or Twitter or any of the other ones, although we may at some point.
Stay tuned. Yes.
We've discussed that.
Yes.
The other big one would be we do have an official website. It's just divinemartyr.com. We've got information there. We've got photos. We've got media. You can stream most of our music there. You can purchase it if you want. We do have an online web store with, various types of merchandise, T-shirts, CDs, that sort of thing. So absolutely stop there, and we of course appreciate any support. I mean, it's like, and Mark's been posting this lately. I mean, a T-shirt's worth what, 8 or 10,000 streams on Spotify. So a lot of people don't realize that, but selling merchandise, that's one of the biggest ways that we fund the band.
Yep.
So obviously any support there is always going to be appreciated.
Yep.
Definitely.
And also, we just want to also, if you love it, if you like us, we're gonna do what we can to get you a T-shirt and so forth, and try to not get eaten on the post and so forth. But it's like, yeah, we'll get you a T-shirt somehow. We're not sure how, but we'll get it to you somehow. So stuff like that.
One way or another. Absolutely. Yep.
I was going to ask about the merchandise. Have you got anything new coming out, like new T-shirts or caps, baseball caps, beanies, that type of stuff?
Yeah, we do have on the Jason. Do you have the store webs? I actually don't have that in front of me. But if you go to our website, if you navigate through the menu, you'll see we actually have a store. We'll actually house our own internal store. And then if we don't have those in stock, we actually partner with it's now called Anchor Merchandise. They have some of our products on print by demand. Hats, let me see, ball caps, I think beanie hats, coffee mugs,
coffee
cell
mug, phone cases, all kinds
accessories.
of things.
Yeah.
So we, like Mark said, we've got kind of the stuff that we have physically on hand, and we sell that through our website and at the live shows, of course. But then, Anchor has quite a bit of just sort of an expanded product offering that they're able to do print on demand stuff, which it's been really cool for us because it's no overhead for us, and each product's kind of made to order. So it's been a really good partnership with those guys. Yeah, they've done some good stuff for us. Yep.
Yeah, and then as far as like new
So
material,
I have put the links in the description.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I see that now. Yeah. And I think the store is just divinemartyr.com/store, I think is the actual.
It's something like that. Yeah, I didn't have that memorized yet. So.
Yeah, like Mark said, you can get through the website navigation menu. You can get there too, but I think that's the direct link if you wanted to use that. So, yep.
And then definitely find us also if you want to just hear the music. We're on Spotify. We're on Deezer. We're on YouTube. We're on Pandora Radio. So
Pandora, Amazon Music. Pretty much all the major streaming outlets. We're there for sure. So whatever your preferred method of streaming music is, I'm an Amazon Music guy. I know a lot of people are doing Spotify these days, but yeah, it's all out there for sure. So.
Cool. This will be my sort of like last question. Is that have you got any advice for people who want to become a musician?
Yeah, I've got. This is one I actually I took notes on, and I was like, what would I if I could talk to my 20-year-old younger self, or 25-year-old younger self, what would I tell myself? And the first one is I would say, learn to accept criticism and don't take it personally. More of be able to filter it out. Sometimes you have just awful criticism. It's not constructive in any way whatsoever. You're going to have a Karen. Get used to it. It's one of those I'd say develop thick skin on the non-constructive criticism. But on the good criticism, they gave you basically a way to improve, constant improvement idea. They give you kind of a roadmap to go after, and I think that's honestly great. There's a phrase, I don't know if they use this across the pond, but here in the U.S., at least in the Midwest, they have a phrase over here that says, "What you don't know could fill a book." For guys like me, I love that because I like to constantly improve, and I like to keep learning. And so I'm thrilled. I'm great.
Just disappeared.
What's that? Am I still there? But yeah, I would say if is learn to accept criticism and then
take issues there.
Oh, fine. But I'm still here. So if other than that, I would say just you would get into the technical aspect
sorry
of
about that, guys.
Yeah, that's fine.
No worries.
Yeah. So I can keep going if you wish.
So you could probably talk on that subject for days, I would imagine, Mark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say second everything Mark said. I mean, don't be afraid to fail. I mean, that's the part of learning anything is, sometimes you're going to fall, you're going to stumble. The important thing is you get back up and keep going. So don't be discouraged. And, I would add to that too. And this is something that I've always kind of made a point to do. I don't know that I did it consciously, but, always seek to play with people that, like Mark says, if you're the best guy in the room, you need to find another room. Always look for people that are better than you, people that are going to stretch you musically, and they're going to make you better as a result of that. So don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated to walk into a room with with a better musician, because, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be stretched, you're going to grow, and you're going to get better as a result of that. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and maybe fall on your face, because it happens to the best of us. But, you just get up and you keep going and you try again until you get where you want to be. So absolutely.
Yeah. And then I could keep going. It would fill up at least another half hour. I'm not going to go that long, I promise. But the usual ones, if you're especially a drummer, play always with a metronome.
Yeah.
You can get them on your phone. Just download the app, get started. Learn music theory. You have more resources now than you've ever had. Learn the basics. You can start training your ear. You can start understanding why chord progressions work. You can start understanding the basics. Here's one that I actually have learned how to do because I'm a stats guy by trade. So aside from music, I'm quality, but it's actually stats and data and quality. So I work with data and quality in the field of quality. So learn how to promote. And what it is how to promote yourself and get your name out there. And if something doesn't work, guess what? You failed. No problem. Learn from that failure. We know that didn't work, so we got to try something else. We got to find where our people are at. Sometimes we get some hilarious hate. We'll say some hate mail because we had a failure on a promotion or something. And I know there's people out there like, why are you spending money on promotion? I'm like, how else are you going to get your name out there? You have more, like I said, with resources. You've got more resources now than you had 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I could take out an ad in 3 magazines. I'd be out probably $5,000, I'm guessing, US dollars. I don't know how much it is. I'm just guessing. Maybe it's less than that or so, but it's in the thousands of dollars if I promoted our band in 3 magazines. And you might get 3 people to read who you are. Now you can do that for 1/100th of the price just to get your name out there. And you can find somebody be like, hey, I might dig these guys on Spotify. Add it to your Spotify playlist.
Absolutely.
So we've got the resources now. Just do it. Get your name out there. And it's one of those, at the end of the day, it sounds like we're treating this such like a business and so forth. And there is the business aspect. At the end of the day, well, we're just saying, hey, you like this band, you might like us, check it out. And we want to come play for you. And that's literally the whole promo part. A lot of people will come in there and they don't want to ever talk about promoting themselves. And I don't understand that, because I've heard some incredible musicians just in the central USA who never promote themselves, and they would be incredibly marketable, maybe not in the US, but maybe they could go and promote themselves in Britain and they would do really well. And it would be a treat. I'd love to tour with them, It's one of those. They're amazing musicians, and they just they learn how to play and then they give up on themselves. So
yeah, agreed. Yeah, the business aspect cannot be overstated, the importance of that.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned even just being in this band. I've been doing music for a long time. Almost probably close to 30 years, and that's just for so long. That's not something that I really considered. Right. And to be in a serious band that's, and it's not like we're touring the world or anything, but like Mark said, if you're going to get yourself out there, if you're going to take the time to write and produce and release this music, then you have to be kind of willing to take that extra step and do what you have to do to get it out there. So yeah, that's a big part of what we do for sure. And networking too. I mean, not just with the fans, but with other bands. I mean, I make it a point to interact with my favorite bands, because my thought is when that band comes to tour the U.S. from Europe or from wherever, and they're looking for local support acts and that sort of thing. I mean, if you get in with it, it's the old adage. It's all about who you know, and there's a lot of truth to that for sure. So again, network with the fans, network with other bands, and you never know what kind of doors that's going to open for you. So definitely.
Yeah. Then there's one that I'm just going to say it because for some reason people don't hear this, and that's not a joke. Yeah. It's also take care of your hearing and your health, because a lot of people they get to that point and they never take care of themselves, and then they have issues with medical and they can't execute their musical parts, and they can't play live. They can't keep the energy up and so forth. And it's like, at least on drums, I'll speak as a drummer. I'm not going to speak for a guitar player, but we're physical musicians. It's the
Absolutely.
same way you train to run a 5K or a marathon. It's you have to build, you have to train, and you have to take care of your body so you're not getting injured. And some people don't consider that.
Yep.
So
It's a true story. Absolutely.
and then the only other piece of advice I would say is learn basic production. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's not
Yeah.
my job," and I'm like, "Well, it's become your job," for lack of a better term. It's like so let's say you're learning drum tracks. It's like, okay, well, or you're recording your instrument. Do I know at least the basic way how this is going to go into my computer or into the recording device? Do I know how to get the best tone out of my device? Can I, what can I do at least on the audio side where I'm more, I tell my students to be studio ready. If you know you have your parts, and that there's a whole half-hour curriculum I could talk about that. I call it the PET principle. It's precision, ergonomics, tonality. And then if you add showmanship, then you add an S to the end of that, PETS. So you have showmanship. You also have to have an interesting show to play live. And I tell people, is like, to be studio ready, you have to have that balance. It's definitely I'll say balance, is the best word, because if you err too much on one side, you'll neglect one of the other sides. So you have to play with good precision to the instrument, to the part, the click track. You have to play with good ergonomics, or else you might get injured. You have to play with good tonality. And you can't play with a poor tone. And even if you're playing the part right, it'll still not sound professional. It'll still sound kind of sloppy, even with bad tonality. And then on top of that, you have to be a showman. So it's like, learn all of that. That's the local side, but also learn how does that come into, how do you record that? What's the best way to get the best tone out of my instrument? How do I get this into a recording device? And that's one of those. You have conversations with the engineer. You become best friends with the engineer. And he'll teach you, he or she or whoever's recording you will teach you a few things. What's the best way to get this captured? And listen to what their suggestions are. Learn a little bit of stage production, lighting production. It's like, I'm here on a vlog and I've got 2 lights up and it's portable. 5 years ago, it would have been a fairly major undertaking. The technology is helping us out now, and be able to present yourself accordingly. This is not an A-list, rig or anything, but it's like, how am I presenting myself, and so forth. All the stuff the bands can do. And you don't have to sit there and say, "Oh, I'm trying to pretend that I'm an A-list band or anything." No, it's just bring your best foot forward and know some of these little things that you know how to improve upon. And if you don't know it, you have something you learn for the next month.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're kind of the perfect example of that right now, because I mean, like I said, we're in a situation where we were working with an engineer, and something came up. He went off to the military, to basic training, and hey, I'm going to be gone for the next 7 months, and so we're kind of left sort of scrambling and kind of gathering our thoughts, and like I said, we're in that position now where we're looking to retool and maybe do some of the tracking and the engineering side of stuff on our own, right? So that's and Mark has a background in that, but the rest of us really don't. So we're kind of learning that, and it's been certainly a process, and we'll continue to learn and kind of hone that craft. But yeah, it's certainly been a challenge and a change in direction for us that we didn't necessarily see coming, but going forward, I think those are going to be good skills to have on hand, right? I think that's going to serve us well in the future. So, it could be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, if you want to look at it that way. So,
And speaking of technology, a last minute technological fix I just had to do real quick. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh man, point.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I've been reading. I've been reading autobiography of Skin, deleted from Skunk Nancy, and
Mhm.
very similar to things what you've been saying. Over the last, I think, only 5 years or so, she's been she had to learn quite literally quite a lot of like how to construct a song, how to actually present the song, how to that's before she started Skunk Nancy. And then when she got going into the studio, she didn't know anything of the tech side of things. One of the things she said was, don't ask the engineer to make it look pretty, to sound pretty. Learn how to do it. Learn how to record a song and actually put it to like to the best. Learn how to actually record it and say it to the engineer, I want it this way. I don't want it that way. I want it this way, type of thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
and that was
true.
like, and she had to learn quite a lot. Learn quite a lot to actually say this is what I want. Yeah, and to actually say it, to sort of like go to the level of the sound engineer to actually to get the best sound for what she wanted,
Mhm.
to
Yeah,
what she
absolutely.
envisioned in her head,
Yep.
and to envision what she wrote down on the song.
Yeah.
So
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
man. The more you know, for sure.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, yeah, because if you're working with a producer as well, the producer helps you with that as well. But the producer and the engineer and anybody else involved, you show them like the objective you're going for, and they can help you. If you don't know how to get there, then you've got a team you can work together to meet the goal, like you just said, and it's
Absolutely.
wonderful. The more you know, the more you can communicate with some of those areas. So that's yeah, I've definitely learned that quite a bit. I think in the last 20 years, it's
Mhm.
you realize you know some things, and then you realize what you don't know very quickly, which is not a bad thing. Like I said, you
Right.
constantly improve. So
Agreed. Yeah.
yeah. So any last words before we sort of like start wrapping things up?
No, just appreciate you having us, and
yeah, we're happy to be here.
it's been a pleasure to chat with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're just honestly just happy to speak with you, and the usual one is like stop by, say hi. Anybody's listening, stop by and say hi to the band. And we love hearing from people across the pond. Send us a message. So
Yeah, definitely reach out, man. We love to interact with folks out in the world and love to meet new people. So yeah, don't be shy. Definitely reach out to us.
Yeah, cool. So guys, go check out Divine Martyr. All the links are in the description there, and they are absolutely brilliant. So go check them out, guys.
Appreciate you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. Again, thank you so much for coming on and doing this little interview. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely, yeah.
And,
Thank you so much.
all right. Take care.
Technology, don't you just love it? Yeah, God, why?